He exaggerated that. Bill, alcoholic. I was going to thank my hosts. I really don't know what to say now. It's not senility, it's serenity. I just don't care. Laura and Matt have been gracious hosts, and the only mistake Matt has made since I've been with them is he was at some point, several points of time, he was unaware of the fact that Laura was always in charge. And that was kind of pathetic. When I'd like to thank Steve for inviting me. I know he was desperate because Rick Bruckner canceled on him. Some bullshit about having a baby or something, you know. Some people just don't have their priorities. Boy, you've had a hell of a lineup of speakers this weekend. This has been... I had a couple of flight delays, and I walked in here Thursday night. Got the last 2/3 of Deb's talk. I've heard her talk before, and that started it. If you haven't heard that, get it. You know, Ralph and Ron are just the best, and you got to come tomorrow morning because we got to find out how the movie ends. You know, and they've done a really good job of dividing up the time well. You know, even though there is quite a bit of sibling rivalry in there. You know, but these guys are the best. I'm telling you. You know, I go to a lot of these things, and I hear a lot of workshops, and it's just very powerful. It's very real. You know, one of the beauties of Alcoholics Anonymous is it's real. You know, when you hear somebody get up here that isn't being real, boy, you can tell, can't you? You know, and these guys are just real. Kent's one of my favorites. He's a little excitable. We're figuring as time goes by, someday he might come in for close to a landing. I don't know. I mean, he starts off, took him 5 minutes before he even introduced himself. You know, he just like, I thought, you know, he's just gonna go. You know, it just gets you cranked up, man. And Magdalena's my favorite. Where is she? There she is. I'm sure Carlos and my wife would understand if I took her home with me. I'm certain I could work that out. I think, and if you haven't heard her talk, that Al-Anon talk, get that. I mean, it's powerful. It's more powerful than a lot of AA talks that you'll hear. Where that woman came from, who she is today, it's stunning. It's really stunning. Juanita is like one of the. She may not be the queen of Al-Anon, but she's at least a cardinal or a saint or something, you know. And I'm very good friends with her husband, with both of them actually. And, you know, she's either a saint or she's got some masochistic tendencies or something. I'm not sure what it is, but, you know, the two of them are just two of my favorite people, and I love. One of the fun things about coming to these things is listening to the Al-Anon speakers. You know, I'm an alcoholic, but I'm an avid supporter of Al-Anon. I avidly support Al-Anon. I don't go to Al-Anon because I'm not well enough yet. Don't make Al-Anon jokes if you don't know what it is. A lot of people make a lot of stupid Al-Anon jokes. But if you do know what it is, you can make some great Al-Anon jokes. It's like, stop and think of the consciousness of an individual that would live with us on purpose. It's like, what are they thinking, you know? It's like... And if you don't think the Al-Anon is sicker than the alcoholic, or at least as sick, if not sicker, just think of Carlos, the badass drug dealer with Juanita chasing him around with a knife, going to kill him, and he's running. Guy, run from that. I heard Kathleen this afternoon. She's a homegirl. She's out by me. I never heard her before, and it was a riot, to say the least. You know, you want to get a taste of Southern California star sobriety, you know. I mean, it's like, we get weird out there. It gets weird, you know, out there. And what a great talk that was. And so, you know, there's no pressure here. You know. Lee came up to me before the talk and he says, "So what are you going to do now, man?" It's like, whew. Yeah. Well, first thing I do is I sit quietly in meditation and I try to come up with the truth. Because you do this often enough, you start making stuff up. You know? And I'm not really lying when I do that. It's, you know, I'm just trying to keep my own interest, you know? And there's been so much information disseminated. I mean, I sat here all weekend long. I've listened to pretty much, I think, every speaker, and you know, Ralph and Ron, all this information is being disseminated, and some of it I didn't agree with, and now I've forgotten what that was. I was already, you know, I'm going to have my day in the sun. I'm going to tell, you know, because they're wrong about some stuff, but I forget now. You know, and my story is I was a surfer and a biker and a tough guy, and I never went to the beach. My motorcycle rarely ran, and I was afraid to fight. But I looked really good, man. I had a chrome Nazi helmet for a hat and a primary chain for a belt and black greasy Levi's and big black boots with chains around them. I've got tattoos all over me. But I had a clip-on earring because I didn't want to hurt myself. That's all you need to know, huh? My biker nickname was Horny. I have it tattooed here on my arm, and it's misspelled. It's Horney. Horny. People have asked me, "Are you going to have that removed?" No, never. I don't ever want to forget. You know, this is an indicator of my mental prowess. You know, and 3 of us actually made the decision on the spelling. So you can imagine who I was running with at the time. You know. Tattoo guy said, "Yeah, okay." Yeah. You know, all the stories you hear, and boy, you've really heard it strongly this weekend, are the same in that, I mean, the drunk-a-log can be different because we come from different places, different cultures, raised by different people. Some of us came from very, very dark places, very horribly alcoholic, dark, scarring places, and others of us were just kind of the bad seed. And, you know, so the stories can be different. But pretty much every speaker you hear will tell you that long before he or she ever drank, they didn't feel part of. They didn't feel connected. They felt weird, gawky, geeky, strange, odd, freaked out. You know, they hid in some kind of behavior, reading books, eating, you know, huffing tailpipes or something, you know. I mean, you know, holding their breath till they black out and spinning around and falling down. And you hear all kinds of stuff, you know, about what we were doing. And a lot of times when we're telling this story, you'll hear people say that I had the ism long before I ever drank, that this feelings that I had was an indicator of my alcoholism. Sometimes we use this term called alcoholic thinking, as if there is such a thing. You know, you start saying stuff around here often enough, say it with enough authority, people will just pick it up and run with it. You know, it's like, and pretty soon we're all walking around going, I got alcoholic thinking, you know. You know, the only place you hear that term alcoholic thinking is in Alcoholics Anonymous. No one else uses that term. It's like an Al-Anon. You'll never hear an Al-Anon talk about an alcoholic having above average intelligence. Never. It never comes up. You only hear that in AA meetings, you know. And, I mean, you can count the number of times somebody you've heard in an AA meeting says, I'm a workaholic. Now, survey the other people he lives with and see if anyone agrees with that idea about him, you know. Yeah. You know what the professional community says about us? They say that we are emotionally immature. And we hear that and we go, no! I have special thinking. I have alcoholic thinking, and it's never going away. And you need to consider that when you're dealing with me. I have special thinking. Now, I'm convinced, after almost 3 decades of in-depth research, that me, therefore you, are emotionally immature. And the difference between us and the other kids who also felt disconnected, also felt weird and gawky and too many zits and, you know, boobs aren't big enough and all the stuff that we go through as kids, because if anybody here has raised teenagers, you've seen it. You know, they're 10, 11 years old, you're their favorite toy. You know, somewhere around 12 or 13, they look at you, you are the stupidest creature they've ever seen in their lives. You don't understand, nor will you ever understand what's going on. The difference between us and those other kids is that we medicated that feeling and we never grew out of it. We never processed it. We never grew up. We never paid attention in relationships and learned what works and what doesn't work. We never learned what our strengths were that offset the weakness that we perceive in ourselves. We never did any of that. We medicated it, most of us. Some are worse than others. Some of us get to Alcoholics Anonymous, we have no social skills whatsoever. You ever met those guys? They're special, you know. Those are the guys you sponsor that they ask you questions like, how do you ask a girl on a date? Really? Do you like take them somewhere to eat and then a movie? Is that really what happens? And you're looking at a guy that's 35 years old. You know? He's never rented an apartment. He's never lived in a car. I had one guy that was living in a park down in Hermosa Beach, and he woke up one morning and there were ants all over him. And he said, I wonder why there's ants on me. I'm not dead. That was his response to waking up in the park. You know? Then there's the rest of us that are just kind of idiots. You know? And we're gawky and we're geeky and we walk into AA. You know, I was 37 years old when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. And what's going to happen to me now is I'm going to grow up now. And the chances of me doing that and looking good are really slim. You know, I'm going to wear the clown suit. We all get to wear the clown suit with the big shoes, the nose, the dumb hat, the pants hanging down, misspelled tattoos, you know, that we don't want anybody to see, you know. I'm the guy that walks into the room, and if you're looking at me, it's what the hell are you looking at? And if you don't look at me, I'm heartbroken. And there's no middle ground. There are not levels of emotional development, you know. My sponsor used to say to me, "Oh, did I hurt your feeling?" It's not like there's several of them, you know. And we're all on this search for self. Like there's something to find. You know, I'm convinced it's not there. It never developed. The biggest problem I have in Alcoholics Anonymous today and in the last almost 30 years is that are the parts of me that never developed. The character defects are obvious. You can see them. They're easy. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. You know, he's a loudmouth, arrogant, pompous. Some people have said that about me. You know, that's come up a few times over the years, you know. And, you know, the egomaniac with the inferiority complex, that guy, you know, all that stuff's easy to spot. What about the parts of me that never developed, like compassion? I have no compassion. I can't feel you in my life. And I don't know that. I'm clueless. I don't know that. You ever had somebody stand in front of you and look right at you and go, "You're not emotionally available for me"? You ever heard that? Usually in family group, you know. When she finally comes clean, you know, she looks at me, "You're just not You know what they mean by that when they say that? That I've got something that they want and I'm withholding it. The truth is worse. I don't have it. It gets worse. It gets worse. I don't know that I don't have it. You've convinced me that I've got it. And I'm helping you look for it. And this dance is going to go on forever. And there's a whole industry out there that supports us in this effort. There are professionals with degrees and shit hanging on the wall, you know, $300-400 an hour, and everybody's involved in finding that good little Billy down inside that I've suppressed and stuffed and am in denial of, and then they've made diseases out of stuff like guilt. You know, when I feel guilt, you know why? It's because I'm guilty. Who knew? You know? The same thing with shame. I have shame. You ought to be. Shame. You've been shameful for a couple of decades, consistently. You know? Guy came to me one time. He had a bit of a problem with meth. You ever heard about that stuff? Those people do not look like they're having a good time, do they? You know? I mean, there is something wrong. Me and Dan Sherman did a weekend-long workshop with Crystal Meth Addicts Anonymous out in the woods in Arizona. It was like talking to a group of zombies, man. And in the middle of the night, they'd come and want to talk some more, and they'd bang on the cabin door, and I'd look at Dan, I go, should I let them in? You know? You can't tell how old they are. They got holes in their face and stuff. There's something wrong with these people. So this guy comes to me, and he's a few months sober. He lost the entire month of September. He doesn't remember the entire month. He doesn't have any idea. And this is like January. He's like, he does not know what happened in September, right? So we're reading the book together, you know. Finally he comes to me, he goes, my therapist says that I'm depressed. And he wants to put me on medication. What do you think? And I looked at him, I said, well, are you suicidal? And he goes, no, not really. I said, are you homicidal? And he goes, no, not really. And I said, well, maybe you're depressed because you're depressing. You know? Maybe the appropriate emotional response to losing the entire month of September is depression. You know, maybe you'll be okay, you know. I never saw him again after that. So I feel awkward and weird and stuff. So the rest of the story is we discover alcohol. We have a couple of pops, and it goes away. All the promises come true when we drink. Fear of economic insecurity just right out the window. You know, we're all brothers now. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. It's wonderful. So I think the whole idea behind the drinking thing was to have a couple of pops and get out of the house, go to the party, meet him or her, and have a good time and have some adventures and enjoy life. I think that was the whole, if I remember correctly, I believe that was the idea. I ended up naked in my living room, watching television, watching religious television, taking notes. I'm having sex menage a uno. There is no one else in the room. You know, we're partying with Billy now. It's getting serious now. This is some good stuff, you know. So next time some guy walks in one of your meetings and says, I'm just a party kind of guy, ask him, how many other people were at the party you were at? You know? Like there's a party, you know? Like we're partying, you know? If there was a party, we wouldn't be here. There's no party, you know? And we'll fight for our right to party, you know? Like what goes on that peculiar mental twist that tells me, let's go have a couple of drinks, Bill, and have a party. Just stop for a second if you can, if you've been given enough grace to determine when was the last time you were drinking at an actual party, you know? All this stuff is just my opinion, but they're really good ones, you know what I mean? So at 17, I was a bad drunk in high school. Started drinking 14, something like that, 14 or 15. At 17, within a couple of years, it was a lifestyle. I had the big jacket and the slouch and the sneer and bad attitude and a foul mouth. And if you had any kind of authority at all, it just pissed me off. And I carried a gun. And it's really weird because I'm like a white kid from Palos Verdes, which is, I have no idea where this persona came from. Nobody was even looking for me, much less chasing me, you know. But evidently, this will be cool. Let's be this, you know. And I was that, and it was awful. You know, at 17, I'd already been to jail. And I was just a bad kid. I was a bad boy. And I had rage. Not anger. Rage. I'd get pissed. You know, I mean, it was horrendous. And, you know, by the time I was 22 years old, I was in the Oregon State Mental Institution. I needed a rest. You know, it was the 60s. Remember the 60s? No, you don't. You know, it was the 60s, you know, and I was right in the middle of it. I graduated from high school in 65. The road from Los Angeles to San Francisco was the road to Nirvana. Golden Gate Park was the center of the universe, and they weren't eating hitchhikers yet, so it was safe to travel, you know. And the young ladies were discovering their sexuality, and we were helping them as best we could, you know. Old Hornet was out there doing what he could. Come on, don't help me. But it's amazing how you can be in the middle of something real happening, something as real as that, and really not be connected to it. And I've told so many stories about it over the years, I just can't, because I don't really know what really happened. You know, I made up stories, I've lied about stuff, you know, I can't really put it together. I'm pretty sure I did not live with Joan Baez. But I said I did for years. I need to make amends to her for that, you know. 4th of July, Bass Lake, California, 1966. The Hells Angels rode into that valley, and I was there, and I found my career path. That looked really good to me, you know. I always wanted to be like a gunslinger and a tough guy, and I really liked that. I met her that weekend, and little hippie girl, long brown hair, and we fell madly in love, and she was from Oregon. She was supposed to take the bus back up there, and I drove her up there and stayed up there. I mean, we went up there to grow our own. And everybody was going to Oregon, you know. The Oregonians did not like that. And we went up there, and we ended up getting married and had a couple of kids. And at 22, I was running with an outlaw motorcycle gang and sticking needles in my arm every day and drinking like a fish and not coming home to that family. And they were on welfare, and we lost a house and a couple of cars and jobs, and we lost ourselves. And I ended up in a mental institution, in the Oregon State Mental Institution. And this place had big walls with barbed wire on the top. I was on the ward that Ken Kesey was on when he wrote Cuckoo's Nest. They filmed the movie on the ward that I was on. Now, I'm not bragging, but it's all I got. You know? Ralph and Ron actually went to college. I don't understand it. I just don't get it. I couldn't find the place, you know. This was my graduate school. Some years ago, I went up there to speak at a conference, and I drove around and I found the place, and I go to the dinner for all the speakers and the committee, and I'm sitting next to this long ponytailed guy that had gone up in the 60s and just never returned, sober about the same length of time, about the same age, and I'm talking to him. I said, you know, I was in the mental institution over here, and he says, well, I worked there. I looked at him and I laughed and I said, oh, of course you do. Where else would you work, really? And he says, you want to go see the place? And so he called security, and he said, we have a dignitary from the South, and we found the place. I had my picture taken next to the sign and everything, brought it home to show everybody. This is my alma mater, man. This is graduate school here, And I've since I've been up there several times. I've made a bunch of friends up there, and this guy, UPS Mike, he came up to Portland where I was talking one time, and a bunch of guys, and they brought this T-shirt. They had this T-shirt made. It says, Oregon State Hospital Alumni. Anybody else here been in a mental institution? Oh, come on. There's always somebody who goes, yeah! But there's a bunch of you out there going, well, it really wasn't an institution. They were just observing me. State of Oregon thought I should leave, and I agreed. It was awful. There was a lot of violence, and it was a scary time. We laugh about it now because it's not like that. When it's like that, it's not funny, And I had a lot of wreckage up there. And I came back down to California, and my sober dad, who got sober when I was 6 years old, he got sober in 1954. When he died in 99, he was 45 years sober. Very active in AA. My mother got involved in Al-Anon in 54. I believe it started in 51 or 2. So she has letters from Lois, and we hung out with the Chamberlains, Chuck and Elsa, and that's before. This is pre-Icon days. This is when people were just sober. That's who was sober. That's who was going. There weren't many of us. What these people were doing in my house as I was growing up is they were building the AA on the west coast of the United States that you and I now enjoy when we go out there. That's what they were doing. That's what they were doing all over the country, not just there. I mean, that's what people were doing, starting central offices and starting meetings. The term circuit speaker came from, as I understand it, from the circuit was Los Angeles, north to Bakersfield, back down south to San Diego, back to L.A. That was the circuit. And there were no freeways. If you had a car and you had time sober and enough time to do it, you were a speaker, because there just weren't many, And that's how they were connecting the dots. That's the house I grew up in. I'd come home from school, there'd be some drunk sleeping on the back porch waiting for his sponsor to come home. I'd get him up and drag him in the house and clean him up and stuff, We had an old guy, Harold, that was like, I grew up in one of those houses that had a lot of weird aunts and uncles around all the time, And all those people were always kind to me. I mean, one day I came home, there was a woman hiding in the garage. That was the Al-Anon. They have issues. It was hard to tell who was weirder, man. I couldn't tell. Who's drinks? Which one drinks and which one's just nuts? And this old guy, Harold, he couldn't get sober. My dad would give him jobs around the house and put a little money in his pocket and get him clothes and stuff. And he kept drinking. He didn't have a car or anything, And then finally he got sober, and I saw him clean up. I watched him clean up. I watched him. He was always a sweet man. He was always a kind man. And when he got sober, that didn't change. He just would look you right in the eye. And he showed up. He had a car, and he got a job, and he'd come over for dinner, And I watched that happen. And then he met a woman in AA, and I went to the wedding when they got married. And then some years later, he got drunk, got divorced, and then I went to his funeral when he burned himself up alive, smoking in bed in an old hotel. And I was 13 years old, I believe, when he died. And I knew that the reason that man died was because he drank. I knew it wasn't just some tragic mistake. I knew at 13 years old, and probably before then, that when alcoholics drink, bad stuff happens. Bad stuff happens. And you would think that would have had an impact on me of some kind. I don't think it matters at all. I can remember thinking, I'm not joining my old man's club, no matter what happens. I'm not going there. That's embarrassing. You know, the arrogance of alcoholism. If you see a drunk laying in the street and he's peed on himself and pooped on himself, if his eyes are open, you can bet he's got a plan. There's a plan, you know. And, so I came back down to Los Angeles, and my sober dad let me sleep in his garage, and he gave me a job in his machine shop in El Segundo. And I tried to clean up my act. And I met another woman, because one of the things about me is I can't ever be alone. It is a group effort getting me through life. It takes a village, you know, and it's amazing. There are volunteers, you know, and I met this girl, and we tried to make a life for ourselves, and I, you know, I mean, the first thing you got to do if you're going to clean up your act is you got to quit shooting heroin, because you can't get anybody to go along with the concept of social heroin use. There is no support for the position, you know. And you got to quit taking acid, because normal people have two-way communication with each other. And with LSD, you just don't need the other person. You can pretty much just party by yourself, you know. And that's how I know I'm an alcoholic, you know. Each one of us has to answer that question. There's a good reason for singleness of purpose, you know. Some people use it as a weapon, but I think it's a good tool. It makes sense. You know, identification is a critical aspect of this thing. And when I came in, you know, I'm a hip, cool drug addict from the 60s, man, you know. I'm fat, bald, and 40, and I think I'm hip and cool. You know, it's like delusional. You know, and there's no denial. To be in denial, you have to know some stuff, you know. To be deluded, you don't have to know anything. You can just believe stuff, you know. It's like, and in the end, there was me and a gin bottle. That was it. You know, liquor's quicker, you know, and it worked every time. Got married to this woman, had 2 more children, and at 37 years old, I lived in a house with this wife and these 2 kids, and I had no emotional connection to another living human being. And I didn't know that. I can't stand outside myself and have a separate experience and then compare it to the one that I'm having to determine that there's anything wrong. You know? The alcoholic life seems like the only normal one to me, because it's the only one I've ever known. I have nothing to compare to. Nothing happened to me. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything. It wasn't like I had this great life going on and I started drinking and I lost it all and I'm trying to recapture it. I never had anything going on. How would I know that I'm not connected if I've never been connected? I don't know what that feels like. So I don't know. And people are trying to question me and talk to me all the time. You know, I went to my first therapist when I was 13 years old because of the rage. I spent 1.5 years with the man, and he helped me, and he introduced me to my favorite subject, me. That lifelong pursuit of self. This idea that there's a self to discover, you know. I've been in the mental institution twice. I went back for a follow-up. I liked it so much the first time. I voluntarily went back, you know. And I spent 2.5 years in group therapy at one time. And I love the process. The whole idea that I can go inside, determine the root cause of my problems, expose them to the light of day, understand them intellectually, adjust my behavior accordingly, and then everything will be okay. It sounds good. I love the process. I just don't think it works, you know, for whatever reason. Maybe it does for some people. I'm an insight junkie. I've had hundreds of insights. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it. And sit down and have a few drinks and think about it and share it with your friends, you know. Nothing ever changes. The insight is there. I think it's very real. But nothing changes. Where does the change come? When does the change happen? Now that I understand the inner workings of my deep, profound, complex mind of mine, So I'm in the house. It is March the 26th. And evidently, it was the end. Evidently. I stayed up all night one more time. It was just another drunk. Nothing special. Nothing horrible happened. Nothing. It's you ever woke up in the morning when the sunlight comes up and you, oh, God. And you're in the wrong place, You're in the wrong place. And you're not going to make it to work. And it's going to be another miserable day. One more in a long line of miserable, painful days. And the alcohol has stopped working. They think we're joking when we say that. You ever drank yourself clear? Boy, that was never the idea, was it? I don't know what it looks like from the outside, but I'm drinking and you're still there. I'm shooting for the blackout. I want out by this time. I want out. I don't like being around. I want relief. I want out. And I'm drunk from the neck down. There's no more mental and emotional relief. That's a rude place. So that morning, like any good gangster, I called my mom. Oh. Next time you see some big badass guy walk into your meeting, walk up to him and look at him and go, "Do you live with your mom?" Chances are, the two gangsters over here, man, Who was it said, it's like if you're 40 years old and you're living with your mom, you're homeless, dude, man, you're homeless. I've never been home. You're homeless right now, you're homeless. My mother had been in Al-Anon for 30 years by that time. They're prepared. They're ready and they're organized. And she was there inside of a half an hour. Because you know what happens when we make that decision, if we lay down and take a nap? You wouldn't want to rush into anything. She came and got me and she checked me into a place in Costa Mesa called Starting Point. I spent 35 days in there. Now, I told you about my history of psychotherapy. I grew up in AA, but it wasn't like I had a sponsor and I was working the steps. To me, what it looked like, what I thought was going to happen, what always happened. There's a support group, that they're going to help me work on myself and help me understand, and I'm kind of looking forward to that because I need a rest, and I love it when all the attention is on me. I love it, Don't ever believe any speaker that gets up here and tells you how painful it is for him to stand up here because it tests his humility and stuff. Just laugh in his face. If he's alcoholic, he loves it, man. He loves it. He might have dealt with it, but he loves it, It's like false humility couched in spiritual pride is one of the ugliest character defects that we participate in. It's so transparent. But that isn't the way this place was. Now, while I was in there, they made me wear a sign around my neck. I had to make the sign. We made it in crafts. It's a little rectangular piece of cardboard with a string that went through it, and it said, "I am not a counselor." Because evidently there was some confusion about that. And then after 35 days, they let me out. They just let us out, don't they? Like we're okay now. Go forth, multiply. And where do we end up when they let us out? Here. Alcoholics Anonymous, the world's aftercare program. Did you know that there's no referrals from AA? Did you know that? There's no place you go where you walk in and you say to them, I'm from AA, they sent me here. That place literally does not exist. There's nowhere else for us to go. It really is the last house on the street, man. The inmates are running the asylum. You know? Stop and we are the counselors, you know. We are the counselors, you know. We go talk to Bill, he knows, you know. Now stop and think about this. I've been married 3 times. I've been to a mental institution twice, and people ask me for relationship advice. I give it to them. I figure, hell, you can't hurt them. They're in AA. You know? It's like free. Plus, whatever advice I give them couldn't possibly be worse than what they're planning on doing anyway. You know? Because by the time they get to you with the question, it's a done deal. You know? You know? There's an ugly rumor around here that we don't give advice or express opinions. You know? They also say that there's no experts or authorities in AA. You know? Shit, come on. You know? I mean, if we didn't give advice and express opinions, we wouldn't have a damn thing to say to each other. You know, really. And I'm a newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous. I need some good advice. I do not know how to get along. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I never have gotten it. And don't quote page numbers to me and tell me to read stuff. Sit down across the table like another guy and tell me what I should do. Read the book with me and work the steps. Yeah, but man, I need some help. You know, I was a few months sober, and my wife comes home one day and she goes, hey, I'd like you to stay home on Tuesday nights and watch the children so I can go to an Al-Anon meeting. I couldn't believe she even asked me that. I looked right at her and I said, I don't babysit. And I walked out of the house and slammed the door. And I felt perfectly justified in that. And I made the mistake of telling my sponsor. You learn pretty quick, though. This is one of the last times I told him anything, really. That's why you need road dogs, man, you know. I agree 100%. You know, one of my jobs is to introduce new guys to guys that they'll actually speak with, you know. And because that's where the message really is a lot. It's in Denny's at 3 o'clock in the morning, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and eating banana splits. And isn't that true? In '85, that's what was happening. That's where I got a lot of it, was from there. And so my sponsor told me, he brought something to my attention. He rarely yelled at me. He's not that kind of guy. This time he took exception to this, and he goes, it's not babysitting, they're your children. This was a new perspective. I had never considered this at all. It was kind of interesting, actually, to look at it like that. And he says, you go back to that woman and you look at her and you'd say, I'd be happy to watch my children while you try to find recovery in the Al-Anon family groups. So I went and I said, I'd be happy. Because you see, I don't like kids. They're a pain in the ass, you know. I mean, I can have them and stuff, but I don't know what to do with them. I mean, they don't talk right, and they want to do stupid stuff, and they're more self-centered than me. It's competition, you know. And I don't know yet that I'm afraid of that role. I don't know that it's fear. I just, the women take care of the babies and shit, you know, and they cook and clean. That's what happens, you know. And oh, come on! Don't give me that stuff. I'm more spiritual than most of you now. Just trying to be honest, you know. Come on now, support me in this. So the little boy, he's like 1 year old, he just passed out. I don't know what I thought he was going to do, you know. It kind of scared me. I hope I don't have to change a diaper or something, you know. And the little girl, she's about 3, you know, she watched a little television. We played a board game or something, and, you know, the next week she didn't want to do that. We went outside and played catch and all this kind of stuff. You know, slowly weeks went by and then months went by. My wife came home one time and she said, hey, you know, you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to my Al-Anon meeting tonight. I said, well, you better go somewhere. This is my night with the kids. Isn't that how it works? You know what the worst thing you could say to some new guy in AA or new person in AA is take what you can use and leave the rest. Really? Isn't that what I've been doing all my life? And you're going to allow me with this finely tuned instrument that I bring to you to make value judgments on what's going to be good for me or not. Now, when in the past have I ever shown a propensity towards making good value judgments? Tell me one time that I have consciously chosen to put myself in an uncomfortable position so that I can grow spiritually. You know? I'm not going to do that. You're going to ask me to do something, I'm going to say, no, I don't do that. I got something else to do. Well, we're going to go on a panel in Skid Row. No, I don't want to do that. I don't go to Skid Row. Why would I go down there? Never mind. No, thanks. You know, I want to watch reruns of Law and Order. You know. So you got to paint me in a corner. You know, you got to tell me what to do. And I will respond. I'll argue and I'll bitch and complain and badmouth you at Denny's at 3 o'clock in the morning and find out what other guys are, you know, that's what was going on. And I found out there was a whole bunch of other people that were doing stuff they didn't want to do, and they were having a good time. You know, why do we do this for years on end? Because we're sacrificing ourselves for the sake of AA? This is a party, man. This is the party. It's fun. It's fun to do these things. It's fun to meet people all over the world and communicate with people and do this, or we wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun. 2 things happened to me when I came to AA that I think are just lucky. Number 1, I just liked it. Right away, I liked it. You intrigued me. I love the stories. I love the stories. I loved hearing this stuff. Some of it shocked me. It didn't shock me because of what you were sharing. It shocked me that you were being so honest. Like, why would he say that in front of a group of people? You know, because it's not always pretty. You know, like stand up and say, I don't like kids. You're not supposed to say that stuff. When you say it out loud, it sounds so bad. You know, that's the kind of stuff you pretend like you don't really feel that way, right? Not in AA, boy. They just unload it right on you, you know. And I'm impressed. You impressed me. And it was funny. I got the joke right away. The second thing was I asked a guy to help me, and he actually did, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes you ask people to help you, and they go, yeah, read the book. If you run into a problem, give me a call. This guy said, read the doctor's opinion, make notes in the margin, be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock, here's the address, and we'll discuss it. First time, gave me an assignment. When I showed up there, he did not trust me that I'd read it, and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud. Rule number 1 when you're sponsoring people, make sure they read the book. You know, read it with them. Don't trust them. You know. And the other benefit, side benefit of that is you get to read it too. You know. It may have been a while, you know. And each week went by and we did that stuff. We did that stuff. 6 months sober, I did a 4th and 5th step. Inside of a year, I was sponsoring people. No hesitation. Just boom, 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 like that. You're sponsoring people. There was never any question about whether I was going to do that or not either. They never asked me. They didn't try to talk me into it. It's just what was happening. It's what everybody was doing. It seemed to me. I found out later that wasn't true. I had fallen into a nest of vipers. I fell into a bunch of people that just believe all the stuff. They just do it. I didn't know that other people weren't doing it. I had never heard of anything called meeting-based sobriety. Nobody ever told me that I was going to get the message in the meetings. They didn't tell me to share in every meeting I went to. They told me not to. Really, kindly. They just said, just listen to the people. Just listen to the people. Listen for a while. My life started to change. Things started to change. Stuff happened that I was totally unprepared for. He told me things like, my job as your sponsor is to guide you through the process of the 12 steps, that you might have some kind of spiritual awakening that will bring you some internal peace, and maybe you won't ever drink again. That's my job. I would be happy to sit here and listen to what you think your problems are so that you will not share about them in the meetings. The meetings are for recovery from alcoholism, not about how your day went. That's a good indication of who you are. You don't always get an applause for that, I'm telling you. And my home group is the Hermosa Beach Men's Stag. It's where the men are men and the sheep are nervous. We are sober correctly there. We do not care about how your day went. If you come in there and you start sharing about your girlfriend, we will just clap till you stop. And have you noticed, there's a lot of people around AA, there's some people around AA that say that we've lost our edge, that it's not as effective as it used to be. And I'm here to report to you my opinion, my travels in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think we are as alive and effective and vibrant as we have ever been. I believe that. You just look in your own community. You tell me, are the meetings growing? Are people coming in? Are you outreaching? If somebody walks into your home group and they say they're new, do they get swamped? Do people come up and get their number? Does somebody hand them a book? Is it working? And my men's stag, it's an old men's stag. It's been around since maybe 1950, maybe even in the late 40s. We're not sure exactly how long. But it's an old meeting, and it's gone through a bunch of incarnations. In the 30 years I've been going there, we've spun off probably 4 or 5 meetings. People have a tendency to get a bit pissy, and not me, of course. And I don't truly, there's an ugly rumor that I try to manipulate things from the background. It's not true. I'm very overt about it. I know who the next secretary should be. When I ran for secretary of that meeting when I was 5 years sober, and I had these Tootsie Pops, and we made up little flags that said, "Trust Bill." That's a true story. My sponsor tried to have me impeached. He could not believe I had done that, And, but the children are coming now. Have you noticed? The children are coming to AA. Do you get them here? I figured you were just shipping them to Southern California. And they're about as politically incorrect as you could get. I mean, they're polyaddicted, bipolar, medicated aliens from the deep. It's like, they're just horrible, And they started showing up. They started showing up and coming in the meeting finally after they hung out in the parking lot for a long time, smoking cigarettes, drinking Red Bulls, trying to get laid. And don't be shocked. Come on now. And finally they started leaking into the meeting, and a few of them got sober. Now, after 8-10 years, 50% of that room is probably under the age of 25 years old. About 100 guys, The guy that's the secretary is a guy I sponsor. He's 11 years sober. He's 29 years old. We're just happy they let us still come to the meeting, Some years ago, there was a young guy taking a cake. And when you take a cake there, you got to stand up at the end of the room. It can be very intimidating because we are judging you. And he's taking a cake. He's 15 years old. He's taking a cake for a year. At the end of his talk, he's standing there at the head of the room, and he's yelling, spit's flying out of his mouth. He's pointing his finger, and he's saying, if you're sitting out there and you don't have a sponsor and you're not working the steps, may God have mercy on your soul. I went up to him and asked him to be my sponsor. It kind of scared me. Here's what I think is going on for whatever it's worth. The first step says that we're powerless. And they just said that we were powerless over alcohol because they didn't want us to run screaming down the street. Now, my experience is I think I am utterly and completely without power. I don't see anything else in nature that has any power. Things just do what they do. We are under the illusion that we have some control over the outside world, or even ourselves. I know there's a faction in AA that believes now that I'm sober, I've been re-empowered and I've been given the power of choice back. There's a whole debate. I don't believe anymore I make choices. I think I've been deluded into believing that I'm picking things, that I'm deciding to do one thing over another. And now that I can see more clearly, I choose to live a good life. I don't think that's what's going on at all. I think my inability to accept the way things are outside of me is the source of all the suffering in my life. This illusion that I can make choices, that I have some kind of power over what's going on out there. We make judgments on things. We see stuff out there that something happens and we determine this was good and that was bad. There's no morality in nature. We add the morality. We create that. It doesn't exist in nature. Right and wrong isn't there. Shit just happens. And we have trouble with that. We look at that and we don't like it. We don't think the lion should eat the lamb. We think there's something inherently wrong with that big, mean, ugly lion eating that poor, innocent lamb, bleeding all over and blood splattering, and it's just not right. And we sit down with the lion and we try to, he just doesn't grasp the idea that he should be vegan. He's just not getting it. So we make up some stuff to help us understand this better because it makes us feel better. We create this thing called hope, and we talk about it like it's a positive thing. I have hope in my life. Hope is a problem. It's not a help. We hope that someday in the future things will be better because they're really horrible right now. The present moment, as it is completely incorrect. I am unable to accept things how they are. So I'm shooting for the future. Someday things will be better. And we make up parables like the lion will someday lay down with the lamb when things are good. If that happens, I think that lamb will be nervous for eternity. It is the nature of the lion to eat the lamb. There is no morality in it at all. It just happens. It's the way things are. And I have difficulty with that. I don't like that. It says my life became unmanageable. It alludes to the idea that at one time it was manageable. Boy, I don't remember that, you know. I don't think my life requires management. I think it simply unfolds. The universe, by its very nature, is a giving place. It supplies us with what we need all the time. You and I just take exception to what is being supplied. We think it should be something different than it is. And we suffer. We suffer. If as a newcomer I can grasp the idea of powerlessness just over the alcohol part, just that little tiny bit, the second step becomes operational. I need to align myself with the power. I need to be restored to sanity, enough sanity to not drink and use, but also enough sanity to be able to see the powerlessness. This is the beginning of acceptance. That everything's okay. There's nothing wrong. I tell new guys, especially these young guys, when they come to me now, I started this a few years ago, I look them right in the eye and go, you're okay, man. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect, just the way you are. You're fine. You couldn't have possibly done anything any different than the way it went down. And you're with us now. The war's over. You're safe. You're okay, man. Don't listen to anybody that tells you you're all screwed up. You're not. You're fine. This was meant to be. If I can do the second step thing, if I can say to myself, I can align myself with the power, if I can come up with that, the third step becomes operational. Now, the third step's interesting because it tells us we're going to make a decision to turn our life and will over to what already has it anyway. I think it's nice of them to lead us to believe that we actually have some say in the matter. I mean, you stop and think about it. Isn't this the classic alcoholic position? There's the universe and me. That's physically impossible. It can't possibly be true. We are not connected. We're always connected. But we have this egoic mind that tells us we're not. But we are always, never have not been connected. I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough now. I'm going to acquiesce and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. What life and will is it talking about? The inventory, the resentments, the fears, the broken relationships. Evidently, my happiness is dependent upon your behavior because I spend an inordinate amount of time trying to adjust you so that we can both be happier. You know? You absolutely insist upon living your own life, and it pisses me off at my core. I mean, this is something I will take to the grave. It isn't a minor event. I have fear because I have no plan B, and this isn't working. So I'm afraid of you, and I hate you at the same time. You know, broken relationships. Some people call it the sex list. What else am I going to get but dramatic and traumatic relationships if what I'm bringing to the table is resentment and fear? The fifth step is the ceremony that we go through to complete the third step. We tell ourselves, maybe for the first time in our lives, somebody else and this manager, here's my stuff, I'm pooped, you take it. When you get ready to do the third step with people, I've had guys say to me, I look at them and go, you ready to do the third step? They go, no. I go, why not? He goes, I have a problem with God. I look right at him and I go, me too, let's pray. It shakes him up. You know? I've had several guys say, well, I don't even believe in God. I look right at him and I go, nobody really does. Let's pray. It says here in this dumb book, pray. And there are no referrals from AA. They're going to make us do lame stuff Get over it. I did it, you can do it, and I know I'm smarter than you. My opinion about God is absolutely, completely irrelevant. It matters not. One of the most powerful things I've ever heard in my life, one of the statements, I read a lot of books, and I've been on this, I search, I seek, and it's been interesting. Alan Watts said, true faith is not knowing and having that be okay. Now, I always thought what faith was is I come up with a belief mechanism. Usually for us, it's one we were raised in. People have a tendency to go back to where they came from. You've heard that this weekend as well. But I have this belief mechanism, and I have faith that this belief mechanism is correct because it brings me comfort. But you stop and think about it. True faith is having no belief mechanism. Not knowing at all. And having that be okay. That everything is absolutely as it should be all the time. And I don't have to have the answers. This is how it is. There's peace in that. 6 and 7 are about character defects. You can see them in the 4th column of the resentment list. It doesn't say what was my part. It says what were my faults and mistakes. Sometimes there's no part. A lot of times there's no part. Some things happen to us as children that are just unforgivable. And we carry it around, and we carry it around, and we carry it around. And it's not about agreeing with the perpetrator. It's about freeing ourselves. Forgiveness is an art, I think it comes to us, and that's a whole other discussion. It's a long talk, about that. 8 and 9, he gives us our first assignment. He says, make amends. I'm going to help free you of the resentments. That's the mechanism for freeing ourselves of the resentments, going to the people that we never ever want to see again and cleaning up our side of the street. When you turn and walk away from that experience, you cannot stay the same. You are changed right then and there. This is the beginning of the change, the real beginning of the change. Most people don't do this. My experience. Most people don't make the amends. And they wonder, is this all there is? The answer is no, it's not. There's a lot more. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper. You can't believe how deep it goes. This is not entry-level spirituality. This is the stuff. This is the trenches. We're all little Jesuses out there in the streets with the hookers and the thieves trying to save the people, man. There's nothing deeper, more profound or stunning or affecting than that. It's not about sitting and listening. It's about doing and taking action. It's all geared towards that. People say the 10, 11, and 12 are the maintenance steps. Maintain what? What's there to maintain? What am I going to maintain now? This isn't about not drinking. This isn't therapy. It's not a support group. Matter of fact, the bad news is it doesn't have a damn thing to do with us. It's about the reduction of the sense of self. It's not about finding me. It's not about becoming a better person. It's about reducing this sense of self so I can see the connectedness that I already have. That's what stands in the way. The 10th step is about self-awareness, not self-obsession. Being aware, watching yourself move through life, the continuing inventory process. The 11th step in meditation, I can watch my thoughts. This is a game-changing experience. God is not a concept. Matter of fact, the term God is even a medieval term. You can use whatever you want. It's not a concept. It's an experience. Alcoholics Anonymous is an experience. It's probably the single most significant social movement of the 20th century. Maybe 50% of the North America's population has been touched by AA and the 300 spin-offs that have come with it. AA, Al-Anon, CA, Co-Anon, OA, all the A's, man. It all came from us. You look at the growth of recovery around the world, you have to consider that when you look at the growth of this, not growth of Alcoholics Anonymous. Look what we have spawned. It's not about us. There's something more going on here. But in the 11th step, I can breathe and watch my breath. When my mind wanders, I catch it and I bring it back to the breath. Who's doing the catching? That's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer. Sometimes I think I know. I don't think so. But I know one thing for sure. I am not my thinking mind. This is not who I am. I don't have to change it. I don't have to work on it. I don't have to analyze it. Thank God, it's over. I've been relieved of the bondage of self. It's over. Now I know. Now I'm on to it. I can simply ignore the thing. We even say in AA, my head's out to get me. We make it adversarial. I mean, why would it kill the host, really? It needs me for transportation, you know? I think it's trying to help. It's just stupid. It's flat and two-dimensional. It takes the past and it projects it into the future. That's all it does, over and over and over again. Just ignore it. When you try to work on it, when you want to work with it, it makes it stronger. When meditation, when you're trying to make it go blank, it loves the attention of you trying to stop it from thinking, You just watch it. Come back to the breath and watch it. After a while, it'll die off from lack of use, The 12th step is why we're here. Should everybody sponsor people? Absolutely. There's nothing else to do. Everything else is an activity. Don't ever mistake the activity for the action. The activity's all fun. It's part of a sense of community. But don't ever mistake it for the action. If you open your heart to this work, whatever prejudice you have will come across the room and ask you for help. Now you have a choice. This guy came over and he asked me, he says, will you sponsor me? I think I should tell you that I'm gay. I said, wouldn't you rather have a gay sponsor? He looked right at me and he says, no, I don't have a problem being gay, but drinking's an issue. Who knew? So my time is up, but I'll leave you with this thought. I wish we had more time. I could talk about working with people. It's been the joy of my life. Nothing is as powerful as that. You can't replace that with anything else. If you really want to confront your defects of character, sponsor people. You'll run into every one of them. That's what you and I are going to do for the rest of our lives. That's what's going to keep us here, is that interaction with each other. And the depth of love that comes from that is stunning. It's hard to believe. It's hard to describe. People will tell you that you got to give it away to keep it. No. You have to give it away to even get it. If you're not giving it away, you don't have it. Thank you.